Afternoon, everybody. Jody and I are standing between you and dinner, so we'll try to be quick. We were planning on a little longer presentation, but so I'm going to skip through here pretty fast so we can get to the questions. I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions. As was mentioned, I oversee all the livestock mandatory price reporting for AMS. I'm located in Des Moines, Iowa. Jody here is assistant chief who oversees a lot of our voluntary price reporting, which most of you are familiar with our sale barn reporting, etc. So Jody helps with overseeing that portion of our division. Just briefly, most of you know who we are. You're familiar with our reports. I threw up briefly our mission. We're to collect and disseminate and be an unbiased party. We release about 1,000 market reports each week. Obviously not going to go through many of those today, but I'll touch on a few of them. The function of market news, as you see here, our division operates in the current market. We capture spot markets by the hour. We do weekly reports. Some of you are familiar with NAS data. They do forecasting data, data that's been, past data. We operate in market news as spot capturers of data. Just a few users of our information. We use this slide to show anytime, and it was mentioned that Mike Schultz is a stakeholder, and we're going through these meetings right now, and we always have to bear in mind any changes that are made on our reports. It affects more than just a producer or a packer. Financial institutions, other agencies, economists use our data. I briefly use this slide just to go through briefly our legal authority. The first market report was released in 1915. So you can see here the Secretary of Ag in 1916 authorized for us to begin gathering prices through the Act of 1946. Most of you are familiar with the Act of 1999. That's our Livestock Mandatory Price Reporting Act that we currently operate under. It reauthorizes every 5 years. We reauthorized in 2015. We're due for another reauthorization in 2020. We have a report to Congress due in March of 2018, which is a big reason we're meeting with stakeholder groups at this time to develop that report and make sure everybody's represented correctly. Just a brief breakdown of where we're located, what's covered where. All the livestock mandatory data comes out of 2 offices, St. Joe, Missouri, Des Moines, Iowa. The voluntary side of our division is broken across 28 offices across the U.S. They cover 15 to 20 commodities. You see a range there. We cover eggs, cattle, bioenergy, feedstuffs, you name ag commodity, and we cover it. So I'll go ahead and just get right into why we're here today, and that's namely to talk about livestock mandatory reporting of cattle and beef. I guess we'll probably have some sheep questions as well, it sounds like. I want you to understand before we get going, there's 24 different submission forms used to report this mandatory data. There's no way we have the time to go through that today. Mike Schultz sat with us for a full 1 or 2 days in November in DC, and we went through this, and we still needed more time than that. So we'll just briefly run through some reporting requirements, hopefully answer some questions along the way. So who reports LMR cattle? It's packers that slaughter at least 125,000 head per year. We base that on a 5-year average. We get those actual numbers from FSIS. We just take simply a 5-year average. If you kill more than 125,000 head, you report to us. Currently we have 38 cattle plants covered. That's fed cattle and cow plants. Mandatory reporting covers about 92% of the fed cattle, 33% of the cow and bull transactions. We take the volumes we get through LMR and just simply divide that by total slaughter of those plants to come up with those percentages. LMR beef's the same. If you kill 125,000 head, you're required to report beef and cattle. Sales are from domestic packers only. There's no import data in our price series. Domestic only. Again, they cover over 90% of the box beef volume. It covers first-time sales only on box beef. So the distributors, grinders, exporters. If you don't own a slaughter plant, you don't report to LMR. Is the easiest way to describe that. We do cover beef offal and variety meats through our voluntary programs. It's not a requirement of the Act to report those on a mandatory basis. Just a few important notes before we get going through some submission forms. Packers are required to submit all prices. I hear people say there's data missing. It may not be where you think it is. You may just need to give us a call and help us walk you through the reports. I'm going to pick on Mike a bunch, and I can see you just barely, but you're right in the bright light there. Mike's told me several times, just through meeting with us and learning more about us, he's like, you guys, there's more to this than meets the eye. I've learned a lot. So please do just like Mike. We're very available. We're a public-facing government agency. We're happy to have you come in the office or give us a phone call. Let us help you learn about what we do. Packers are required to submit base prices, net prices on slaughter cattle. Beef prices are all FOB the plant. And all data is reported in US dollars per hundredweight. So just a little bit of a scope of what my staff does. We're just shy of 30 of us in my half of the division. 3 of my reporters look through about 5,000 to 8,000 records a day. We republish between 30 and 50 cattle reports a day, depending on if it's weekly reports, et cetera. In addition to the monthly reports, I put a line of data up there, how we would see it in our system. I obviously took the Packer name off and the plant ID, and it's probably got a little age on it by the look of that price there on that average price. But that gives you an idea when I say we look at the bottom line there, 50 to 60,000 lines of transactional data a day. That's 50 to 60,000 of those lines right there. They could have anywhere from a load of cattle to 12 loads of cattle to 20 loads of boxed beef. So that's what my staff does. 3 of them go through the cattle every day. 3 of them go through the boxed beef. They handle about 15,000 records a day on boxed beef, a higher volume there. We do have a compliance division as well. There's 6 of them located in St. Joseph. They do 2 audits annually to ensure packers are in compliance with the act. They do 1 full day audit. The audit's a full day slaughter, a full day schedule, if you will. And they do at least 1 random sampled audit where we'll just call for random samples. And that's the minimum. If we run into troubles with packers, if we need additional verification, we can be at those plants or companies as many times a year as we need to be. During those audits, the plants are required to provide documentation to prove that purchase type. That's the whole idea behind the audit. And we'll go through the purchase types here in a second. You can see what the documentation is to include on each audit. Here's a look at what we did the last 6 months. We do about 200 audits annually. The last 6 months, you can see the record totals there. Again, I'm gonna go through pretty quick here. Each plant, this is just supposed to be a diagram of how they electronically submit to us. Again, if you kill 125,000 a year, it's basically showing you're going to report through an electronic system 2 times a day. 10 and 2, we release reports at 11 and 3. And I'll start going through purchase types now. The first one is, as we talk about a lot, negotiated cash purchases on fed cattle. We show about 26% of the cattle today are negotiated in the packers covered by LMR. You can read the definition there. The price gets reported to us when the price is known, and that's on every purchase type I'm going to go through. When the packer and the buyer agree upon a price, it gets reported to us the next pricing at the next time period. So that's just a clip there of a negotiated report. I'm sure, again, most of you are familiar with how our reports look. I'm just going to kind of cruise right through these purchase types. They submit them on a form, and a 113 form. Again, you don't need to pay attention to the government lingo. Just know that they submit them on a form. There's a link there. We'll send you the presentation if anybody wants it. You can go through and view all this data. They send it to us. This is the form. These are all public forms. Everybody always asks us, what do packers have to submit? If it's on these forms, they have to submit it. It's a requirement of the act. You can read through there briefly: volumes, class codes, selling basis, purchase type codes are all major codes required. So this is what the packer would submit out of their system to our system with. This is how our market reporters would see that data. Just for an example, this is just a raw import, again, without the packer identifications, et cetera. There's nothing proprietary on these slides. We've scrubbed that off. This is how my staff would see it. That's a mixture of purchase types. You can see negotiated grids, formula nets, negotiated cattle. That's how we would view it. We'll import this data. We'll run it through a series of, we'll analyze the data on a line item basis. Each reporter is responsible. You do the formulas, you do the negotiated cattle, et cetera. They'll analyze each line. They'll look for outliers. Those could be fat fingers. You put an extra zero on the price is a lot of the corrections we make. It could be an incorrect purchase type. We'll do a verification process on an hourly basis in addition to our twice a year audit. So this is just an idea of what the reporters will do to review the data, and then here's the end result of the report. Again, I'm sure many of you are familiar with our reports. Here's just a typical afternoon cattle report from looks like last week. Again, I'm going to keep going pretty fast here. Here's our formula data. You're all familiar with the formula definition. They're often cattle based off our report. They'll take a weekly average or a Monday, top of the market and formulate off that. That's what that would look like. Forward contracts. These are cattle based off the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. They agree to a basis level for a designated CME a month between the producer and the packer. The producer often has the option to nail down that price point during the life of that contract, which is the reason you see some of these reported as committed to us, but until that pricing is determined, we're not able to establish a price. Negotiated grid, it speaks for itself. You all familiar with grids and what those may include. That's another one of our purchase types. And then the packer-owned cattle is our last purchase type. These are cattle that a packer has owned at least 14 days prior to slaughter. They don't report prices to us on packer-owned cattle. Obviously, they can't establish prices on packer cattle. We simply report head counts, weight ranges, slaughter measurements, if you will, dressing percentages, et cetera. On packer-owned cattle are the only metrics we capture there. Committed and delivered cattle are reported twice a day, 10 and 2. You can see on this slide. They reported to us. They report the cattle to us when they know they're coming delivered, and again committed. It's and Mike, we talked about this at the stakeholder meeting. The definition is probably in need of an update, which the group is currently working on. When they're committed, they're scheduled for slaughter, and when delivered, they unload them at the plant. Is what it looks like today, but they report those twice a day. That's a weekly number there, as that example. And again, all these links are live. We'll send this to you, but in the spirit of time here today, we'll just keep going. This is an example of how the committed and delivered cattle come into us on the form. I bunched several together here to show you some slaughtered packer-owned cattle, some forward contracts. These are the forms they come in on. This is what the form itself looks like. Everybody always asks us, what are these guys reporting to you? All you have to do is go to our website and look at these forms, and you can see exactly what they have to report to us per the Act. We do a premium and discount report every week. They submit to us by 9 o'clock on Monday morning. We do a national version and a 5 area. The form looks like this. You'll see the premiums and discounts. These are what the packer expects to pay for the coming week. For any premiums and discounts. This is how the reporter would see it in our office, and this is the final report. Again, just trying to highlight a few of our reports here. Cows and bulls. I know a lot of cow-calf guys are in the room today, and we do a cow and bull report. Cow and bull reporting is a little different than fed cattle reporting. Packers report bids to us in the morning and actual prices to us in the afternoon. So you'll see that this is a report they used for the bids in the morning. You can see you're all familiar with our grades there, the breakers and boners, cutters, et cetera. They'll just simply enter in there and submit to us every morning what they plan to bid for cows or bulls. That's what it looks like in our system. When our reporters start editing. And this is the afternoon purchase report for cows and bulls. When they've actually purchased the animal, you can see here, you'll see the average prices there in the one column. And there's a final report. I wanted to briefly touch on a new report we did. It's a comprehensive report. I'm going to touch on that in a second on beef as well. Comprehensive reporting is something we've done for quite a while on beef. We just started a new lamb comprehensive where we're able to begin releasing formula and negotiated numbers as well. This is the cattle version. This is the only place that the import prices and the domestic prices converge. It's our belief a true comprehensive report and look at that. This is meant to be a snapshot for this full week of all prices that packers pay, whether they be import or domestic. So this is the only place that you'll find any of our reports where the two are intertwined. I placed a link there at the bottom. It's a pretty impressive report. It combines them all, and there's a lot of nice comparisons on the bottom of this report as well. I'm going to try to fly through beef reporting here. It's almost 4:30. I think you guys have a hard out at 4:45, and Jodie still wants to talk about voluntary reporting a little bit. So we'll briefly go through beef reporting here. We're here today and tomorrow, so feel free to ask us any questions you have. I don't cover them today as well. Beef imports, all their data on one report. You'll see that here. Here's some highlights of that report. We only report domestic beef. You see the destination code there on that top line for overseas or NAFTA. We do capture those prices. We do capture those prices, the volumes from the packers on those, but we don't report them anywhere. We put them on a weekly report as volumes at all. For example, last week we reported 65,000 truckloads, car lot loads of beef, domestic beef, and 180 loads of NAFTA products. It would be Mexico or Canada, and then there were 600 loads that went over to overseas destinations. But it's never intertwined on beef reporting. We simply report domestic beef prices. That's a poor example of what a beef report looks like. You're familiar with our cutout values. We do cutout values through, we reconstitute the primals, if you will, then back to a full carcass. We do that by collecting plant yields and then taking our cut line data. There's a shot there at the bottom, chucks, ribs, et cetera. You're all familiar with that. And we reconstitute that carcass to make a cutout value. I want to highlight just a couple of our reports we get a lot of questions on. Our branded box beef report is the first one here. It includes a lot of G schedule, packer programs, government programs, school lunch programs, CAB. It's a popular report, branded report. I talked about the cattle comprehensive earlier. This is a visual we like to use on how comprehensive reports work. This is the beef comprehensive. You can see three major rivers that flow into the Mississippi on this report, and that's how we do our comprehensive reporting. They're all flowing into the Mississippi in this example, and that's our comprehensive. That's a result of taking a negotiated, branded formula report and tabulating those all into one report you see here, a weekly comprehensive cutout. And with that, I know there's going to be questions about mandatory price reporting. I'm going to hand it over to Jodie for just a few minutes here to talk about our livestock feeder cattle reporting, and then we'll open up for questions.
Thank you, Taylor. First off, I'd just like to say thanks to Mike and RCAF and Tatum for inviting Taylor and I to join you here this weekend to tell our story, tell what we do for livestock, poultry, and grain market news. We think that market information is vital to taxpayers, and we, Taylor and I both, I'm going to speak for Taylor because we've worked together for a long time. We have a passion for what we do, and that's providing market information to producers or the taxpayers of this great country so they can help make sound marketing decisions. Voluntary price reporting is exactly what it is. It's voluntary. It's not mandated by any law or any act or anything like that. As Taylor mentioned earlier, the first market report went out in 1915. It was a strawberry report. It was also a voluntary report. So voluntary reporting's been around a long time. I'm going to briefly talk about feeder cattle reporting and then kind of get into some of the other areas. But currently, we're providing feeder cattle market price auction coverage in 31 states. And the importance of that is we're not in every state, but that's a pretty wide swath that we're cutting when you figure that livestock, poultry, and grain market news, including clerical staff, management, and all the way through, we're only a division of 100 people. And as Taylor said, about 30 of those people are working on livestock mandatory price reporting. The other 70 is working on voluntary reporting. But we're covering a lot of auctions across the United States. We're covering a lot of commodities across the United States. And we do it through something what we call a Fed state marketing agreement. So we're working with the state departments of agriculture. We're providing them technical oversight and making sure that they're applying the feeder cattle and the slaughter cattle grade standards accurately. And then that way we can reach more people, reach more coverage with fewer people. We have currently 15 feeder cattle video internet auctions. There's a new one that's going to be coming out in another state, so that number's getting ready to increase. In Kentucky, I believe there's a new video auction, internet auction, that's going to be bi-weekly. Here is September 11th will be the first time for it. We published feeder cattle data for the 12 states that feed into the feeder cattle index. So the feeder cattle index is a 7-day rolling average. It's only data that's 700 to 899 pound medium and large frame number 1 and 1 and 2 steers. And we use the 12 regions. You can see that on the slide. And there's a link there to that settlement price. The information that we also collect information not only at the auction barns, internet sales, but what we call direct trade. So direct trade is from producer to a feed yard or feedlot or to a backgrounder. And our reporters that are in charge of these direct trades, they're collecting head counts, you know, the gender, base weights, grade, muscle score. But what I want to let you know is it's voluntary information. They don't have to give us that information, but we have checks and balances in place to make sure that the information is accurate. Because as a market reporter, there's 3 things that you live by. And I call it the cat syndrome. It's confidentiality. Confidentiality is the number one thing for any voluntary market report. Because if we lose our confidentiality with our stakeholders, with our contacts, then we lose our report. And we control that as a market reporter. You can put me in a firing line. I will not tell you who sold what to who. CAT is accuracy. The A is accuracy. That belongs to both of us. It's your responsibility to give us accurate information. Tell us the whole truth. Tell us all the information. Don't just give us part of the information. It's our responsibility to double check, verify. Especially with the direct sales, there's 2-party verification. We do not use information unless we have 2-party verification on voluntary reporting. And then T is for timeliness. It's my obligation as a market reporter to get that out to you in a timely manner so you can make timely market decisions. So therefore, I kind of put some of the responsibility back on our contacts as we're gathering that. Get that information to us in a timely manner. If you sold your cattle last week and you don't tell me about it till this week, the market's changed. So timeliness is very important. Information that we collect on a direct markets, participants got to be contributing to that report for at least 30 days. We're going to do regular checks. I've known reporters that's gone out to a feedlot and visited these contacts and said, hey, show me those cattle that you bought from so-and-so. What pen they in? Go by and we look at them, we check, and we keep them, we make them accountable for what they're telling us. We evaluate the information that's published before we actually go out and start making it public. And then everything is confidential. Here's a list of our cattle reports. You can go to our website and play around, and you'll probably find a lot more information there than you ever dreamed of. I encourage you to do that. Feeder cattle and replacement cattle auctions. This is just a graph to show you the auctions that are the states that we have currently are providing feeder cattle auction and replacement cattle auction coverage. Florida just come back on. Just in the last couple of weeks, we just renewed a Fed state marketing agreement with Florida that's going to allow us to bring 8 livestock auctions on board in Florida. The areas in this green, those are the 12 states that feed into the feeder cattle index. Some other items that we look on a voluntary basis is, international live imports from Canada and Mexico, meat imports. They're just they're more production numbers or information that we gather from other government agencies, and we just compile it into a user-friendly format on a lot of this information on the international, especially the meat imports, live animal imports, and the pricing. Go to our website, and if you have any questions, feel free to give myself or Taylor a call. Also, I want to invite you, like Taylor did, if you're driving through Kansas City, we're at St. Joe, Missouri, right on 29. Our office is right off the interstate. We're easy to get to. We're 33 miles from the Kansas City airport. You're welcome to come in and sit with one of our reporters and learn what they do. We have an open door policy, and we're formally giving you an invitation to come see what we do. Thank you again for allowing us to come up here and tell our story. If you have any questions, find Taylor and I tomorrow, and we'll try to answer the best we can.